put those computers away once you're finished doing the book numbers. The book that you have right now is Virginia Woolf, A Room of One's Own. Now, I love this book. Virginia Woolf is a genius. She is a genius. Because she's a genius, the book is kind of hard. She will talk about this. Her primary literary technique is stream of consciousness. And stream of consciousness, when you're a literature author, means that you create characters and then you think about how they would think. But then it also doesn't have like a clear progression. She kind of hops around, and sometimes it's a little hard to follow. What this book is based upon two speeches that she gave to largely women's colleges about women and fiction. So when she was writing in the early 20th century, the fiction world was largely dominated by men. The author world was largely dominated by men. And so she was writing about how does a woman like break into that. And these were papers that she delivered, like she read them, she gave speeches. Now, in it, she creates characters that don't exist. She creates places that don't exist. So when it starts out, she talks to them about these two mythical institutions called Oxbridge and Furnham. They're not real, but one is a college for all men, and one is a college for all women. And the college for all men has lots of funding, and the college for all women doesn't have lots of funding. And she compares the two of them. And she actually starts out like, and she imagines like walking into Oxbridge and then getting yelled at for being on the grass. And then she like goes around there and looks at things, and then she goes to Furnham. But now none of these things are real. And then she also creates a narrator who she calls Mary. But then she gives you 4 different Marys' names, and then she says like, it doesn't really matter which Mary I am. And that's a clever thing too. She's making a point there. She also spends a lot of time talking about the dinners and lunches at Oxbridge and Furnham, which might seem weird at first, but think about like why. But along the way, she makes some really, I would say, profound and genius statements about what it means to live as a woman, if I speak in cliche, in a man's world. Really like this book, but it is challenging. Because it's challenging, I have given you a study guide. And the study guide is on Canvas. It's actually not that. There's a study guide on Canvas. It's in the Virginia Woolf module, module 7. It's got like 80 questions or something like that. And they go all out. Actually, I took one out, so I think it's 79 now. Sorry if anybody's OCD. Yeah. So yeah, there's that. So that, obviously, you're going to work on. This is going to be, we still have to talk about the prints and whatnot, but I want to get you started on it. So I want to tell you a little bit about Virginia Woolf. This is actual Virginia Woolf, This is actress Nicole Kidman playing Virginia Woolf. But I wanted a picture of her like writing, and this is her like surrounded by her papers and stuff like that from the movie. I like that picture. So a little bit of background about Virginia Woolf herself. Got the birth and death dates there. Now, one of the criticisms of this book, and yes, this book is considered to be like early feminist literature. And one of the criticisms of this book is that it is early feminist literature for upper middle class white British women. And in fact, I've got a tweet down here from a former student on Twitter, and it says, "Liberal feminism was created by white women who wanted nothing besides equality to men. It's capitalist and toxic. Good night." She's an avowed communist, that person, and she was also from Iraq. And I'm not going to tell you more. I was going to tell you where she goes to college. I'm like, why am I telling you that? So anyway, so that's a criticism of it as a feminist work, that it's not intersectional, that it doesn't encompass the needs of non-white persons and non-white women. Now, but Virginia Woolf herself, she was the product of the second marriage of her father to a woman named Julia. Her father had one daughter named Laura, and the mother came in with 3 children named George, Gerald, and Stella. Now that's going to be important in a minute that she had some stepchildren. And then together, her father's name was Leslie. Leslie and Julia had Vanessa, Toby, Virginia, and Adrian. They were all educated at home. Their father was a highly educated man. I believe the mother was too. They had a huge library. They were all educated at home. And I said Virginia Woolf is a genius. I do not use that word lightly. Like, she is a genius. Oh, and in fact, her first name was Adeline. Her middle name was Virginia, but she went by Virginia. Because she's a genius, as I said, she's challenging. It's challenging to read. It's not on the level of like The Prince, where it's challenging, like, to keep your eyes open to read. Like, I mean, a little bit of that, but it's just, you gotta focus, because she skips from place to place, and then you'll be reading, go, wait a minute, why did we change where we were? Like, when did that happen? And you have to go back. You kind of have to see every word. All right, so Virginia Woolf herself struggled with mental illness for all of her life, from teenage years on. One big issue, her mother died when she was 13. When her mother died when she was 13, she had her first what they called nervous breakdown. Whenever I talk about her, whenever I talk about people, I mean, from the mid-20th century back with mental illness, the SAP team member in me comes out, and I feel bad for persons like her, because they had nothing in the way of treatment other than, keep a stiff upper lip and rest. And that would be pretty much it. And as time went on, her mental illness got worse and worse. One thing that did not help, she was sexually abused by her half-brothers, Gerald and George, during her teenage years. So obviously that's another major trauma.
Did she write about that? How do we know that?
She wrote, letters about that. So, and there are diaries and there are letters, but she did not write about it in her writing, in her literature writing. It's an interesting question, because like nowadays somebody might like write a memoir about that, right? Yeah, in the early 20th century, not really. That wouldn't be a thing. But in her private writings, it's clear that that's what happened. Yeah. So you got 2 major traumas as a teen. Also, when her mother died, her mother actually died of the flu. Get your flu shot, kids. Mother died of the flu. Killed 80,000 people last year. He became depressed as well. So she had a very difficult childhood, and probably was genetically predisposed to depression. One of the things that I feel bad about for Virginia and others is they don't have things like the SAP team here at Penridge. We do. If anyone you know or you suffer from depression or anything like it, also there is a crisis number over there on the door, or you can talk to any teacher or any guidance counselor. Hey, just trying to help. So, continued issues. 1897, traumatic life events. Her half-sister from her father's side, Laura, was placed in a mental hospital. At the time, they would have called it like nervous exhaustion, nervous breakdown, probably like, clinical depression and anxiety is what we're talking about. There's a difference between if you're depressed but something bad has happened and I don't know.
The mental asylum.
Oh, okay, DC. If something bad has happened and your pet has died or something, and then you're depressed for a couple of weeks or whatever, and then that's okay, depressed one thing, but we're talking about like depressed for months, ongoing issues. That's when it becomes a different thing. But at the time, if you didn't get better with rest, that was what was prescribed for women, the rest cure, then you were sent to the mental hospital. Also in 1897, her half-sister Stella, who if I remember correctly she was fairly close to, died. She was pregnant, but then while she was pregnant, her appendix burst, and then she developed an infection as a result of that and died. And I can hear you saying, did the baby make it? I do not remember. That's something I want to, if you think of it, Google it. I'll try to remember to look at that. In 1897, Virginia Woolf attempted suicide, first of many attempts of suicide, by jumping out of a window. That's right, defenestration is the proper word for jumping out a window. She did not seriously injure herself.
Do you know how old Stella was at the time of her death?
I do not. Feel free to Google it if you want, like literally right now if you want to find out about the baby too. So one of the things I want to make a point about Virginia's mental health issues is they were major. In later life, she talked about hearing voices. She talked about like hearing bird songs, but what she would hear would be Greek. Arguably, you're talking about potential schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is visual and auditory hallucinations. I've read things about schizophrenics saying like sometimes schizophrenics will have voices like yelling at them, telling them to do things. And they've done studies and like they found that sometimes some people report voices like yelling at them, like to do someone harm, kill them or something. And they've done comparisons, and some have said that it's as loud as like a chainsaw, or I don't know if you have any chainsaw experience. What's something else that's loud that you might know? A snowblower, a lawnmower, I guess, but like loud. And the thing is, they're like, according to their brain patterns, they're actually hearing that. To their brain, it's no different than you're hearing my voice right now.